Chapter 7. It's been a lucrative few days for Darius. Not only did he manage to come through Marco's house, which yielded a good fishing rod, some twine, some tackle, some paints, some dried food, some clothes, and a few other goodies, but he also paid a visit to Lafayette's and Sarah's old houses. Using a hammer he found in Lafayette's house, he pulled the nails from both of the old houses, and bringing a shovel back home, he started clearing out some space a good dozen meters or so away from his house for a smithy. Now he's just got to deal with the plants. That's what he's doing right now, trying to clear a large enough space around the area that'll become his smithy so that it won't regrow like it did last night. This area had once housed his old smithy, but now there's nothing left except a few loose stones covered in a mound of living plant matter. Using the sharp edge of the shovel, he's swinging it like a war hammer over his head to cleave through thick knots of vines, brambles, and shrubbery. It's barely working, but it's working better than any other method he's tried. There's got to be something he can do to stop the growth, something he can line the perimeter with, or some way to incapacitate these plants on a more permanent level. Asher might know what to do, but Darius wouldn't go to him for help. The only help Asher's ever been was when he gave Darius the stone that had gotten him back to Anah. But even then, it had been Darius who had struggled against his restraints to light a match and put the flame to the stone. Had he been there, Asher would have relished in Darius's suffering. Darius has caught sight of Asher a few times since their encounter in the woods, sometimes on the ground, sometimes flying overhead like some gargantuan bird of prey. Asher's been watching him, and Darius isn't sure why. The optimistic part of him wants to believe that Asher's just curious, but the realistic part of him always wins out. Asher's probably scheming to get him off this island, or even off this whole world. But even if he talked Asher into letting him live in another world, one besides Anah, besides Earth, he can't shake the feeling that he wouldn't be welcome anywhere else. Besides, he knows this place. Even if he lives every waking moment in sheer terror that today will be the day that Asher turns him into a bug and rips his wings and legs off, or rewrites his genetic makeup to take away his sapience, or wraps the trees around him and lets the birds of Anah pick apart his body as he's forced to regrow it every day. Even through all that, this is still his home. He fondly looks back on the days that Asher had been nice, that he had been allowed to live and learn and grow in this beautiful world. This beautiful, beautiful world full of really frustrating plants. Darius's hands are raw from gripping a shovel, sweat's dripping down his face, and his clothes are soaked through. He's glad he left his coat inside. He needs a break. Dreading how much growth he'll find once he comes back, he pulls himself away, back toward his house, the shovel leaving a line in the dirt as it drags behind him. He stumbles a bit to the right, then a bit to the left. He has to stop himself to make sure he's actually going through the doorway in front of him without hitting the frame. Once inside, he collapses on his chair, letting the shovel drop on the floor next to him. He gazes at the ceiling, watching blooms of darkness crowding around the edges of his vision. He stays like that for a bit, letting his eyes close and open again. His sweat doesn't dry, not in air this humid, but it starts to itch on his skin. But he doesn't move. His entire body aches. He can't bear to even think about moving right now, much less accomplish it. As he starts to doze, he tries to think back to how easy it had been to get established on Anah the first time around. He can barely even remember. He had been so shaken from being chased, from the shock of being a respected blacksmith one minute and a living target the next. Or maybe his memory's only failing now because he had just been through all that again. Everything he had feared, the sting of the cold water sapping life from his bones, the days holed up in the mud as bugs gnawed on him, the desperate attempt at finding supplies in an empty house by the road, only to be seen, to have his position called out, to be chased down again, too tired to have a chance at escape this time. He shudders. He can't let that get to him now. His exhaustion thwarts any attempt to think of calmer times. Though before he falls asleep, he remembers that the first time they had seen each other, that first day on Anah, Asher had smiled at him. Some time passes while he sleeps. Then a noise wakes him up. Something massive lands on the roof. Darius jumps, reaching down and grabbing the shovel to arm himself. Then he freezes, trying to listen for any other noises. There aren't any. Feeling his hands trembling, Darius forces himself to his aching feet. He approaches the door, one shaky foot in front of the other. It's probably Asher. Nothing else here is that big. But he hasn't seen him for a while. It's been at least a few days. Easy to lose track of time in this place. And what has he been doing in the meantime? Darius doesn't know if it'd be better to see Asher too often or not often enough. He just doesn't know what's behind those two bright eyes. And he doesn't know how much longer he can take this. He opens the door. There's no one there. Darius breathes a sigh of relief. He sets the shovel down against the door frame. "Hi, Darius." A shallow scream escapes Darius's throat as Asher pops down, peering upside down over the edge of his roof. He stumbles back in the house, his back hitting the floor, his legs flailing as he attempts to scramble back. Laughing, Asher swings himself around and drops down to stand in the doorway. "You always seem so excited to see me," he chirps, stepping inside and looming over Darius. Darius lets out a whimper, gazing up at the person, being this thing standing over him. "Just do it," he screams. "Do whatever you're gonna do to me. I don't care. I'm not leaving this world. I signed up for this knowing you're a sadistic madman, and I'm ready for it. Do your worst." Darius dares a glance at Asher, whose expression is completely blank. The two share a tense few moments of silence before Asher creeps away. Glancing down at the door frame, Asher picks up the shovel. He carries it over to Darius, who feels a painful knot in his gut as he braces for whatever pain Asher's intending to inflict. Wordlessly, with an almost bored expression, Asher points the tip of the spade at Darius's throat. Darius closes his eyes. The cold metal presses against his neck. He can feel it press in when he swallows. He makes no attempt to stop Asher, only tilting his head back to give the monster a clearer shot. His neck stings. He grits his teeth. He can feel a droplet of warm blood sliding down his neck. The shovel clatters to the ground. Darius opens his eyes to see Asher gazing down at him. Asher squats down, setting his arms on his thighs. Then, nonchalantly, Asher reaches out and drags his finger across Darius's wound, both closing it up and scooping up a fingerful of blood, which he quickly licks up. "You don't mean that," Asher says, almost disappointedly. He wipes his finger off on his robes. "What's going on with you?" Darius lets out a shuddering sigh. "What don't I mean?" he asks numbly. "You don't mean it that you want me to do my worst," Asher says. "You can't even handle my best." He grins, but the smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Your best?" Darius growls, all the feelings back in his body, and it's all anger. His fists clench, his limbs tremble, his vision darkens, and before he can really think through what he's saying, he says it. "I knew your best. I knew you when you were kind. But that was all a lie, wasn't it?" He props himself up, then weakly gets to his feet, slouching, yet still looming over Asher's tiny form. "All I get from you now is this. You stalking me. I'm not leaving, and I don't need your help, and I don't need you following me around and hurting me for no reason." Asher laughs. Of everything he could have done, he laughs. "Why is this funny to you?" Darius shouts. "It just is," Asher says, standing and backing away from Darius. "But suit yourself. I'll gladly take my leave. Enjoy your miserable little shack. I can see you're trying a bit of gardening, but it's not going to get far. Bye, Darius. Shalias, as Rhiannon and I used to say. Bye-bye." Asher darts toward the door and closes it behind himself, leaving Darius alone. End of chapter 7.